Hi, good evening, everyone. Welcome to this live session on laser engraving images with the YoraHome 6550 Pro diode laser engraver. I'm Charles, and I'm joined today with our team members, Sean and Angie. In this session, we'll be covering the basics of laser engraving and how to use the YoraHome 6550 Pro diode laser engraver to engrave images on wood and different software and tools available to you. All right, so we're going to take you through selecting a photo, editing a photo with a couple of different available software, tricks on getting darker burns if needed, and finally engraving a photo. We will also answer your questions along the way. Please keep in mind that what we're going to show you tonight is not the only way to do things. These tips are to help you get things going, and you may find other ways that work better for you. All right, before we start, let's take a quick look at the equipment. We'll be using the YoraHome 6550 Pro with a 10-watt optical output diode laser. All right, and everything that we are going to go through tonight is relevant for any machine or any with any laser. The only for the engraving. Of course, you will need a computer with relevant software loaded. The two recommended laser control programs are LaserGRBL and LightBurn, and Angie is going to be going into those in just a moment. We will be going through both, explaining the process on how to use them. And then photo editing software we'll also cover with Sean. It's a little bit more complicated, and also it has a much larger list to choose from. So let's, I guess, get it started with Angie. Hi, Angie.
Hi, everybody. Okay, so I have the free version of LaserGRBL or GRBL, and what we recommend everyone kind of start with to learn their laser, because it's the simplest program to use. Oops, I forgot you changed. Hold on a minute. You changed my window. With BL, you start with loading a file. I just have a picture of James Dean up, just a simple simple picture, nothing too fancy. Once you to explain some of the buttons to you, you connect your machine here. You want to, once you have your you have your machine connect button right there. Have your machine set up, and where you want to start, you hit this little globe button that sets your 0 point. And then you have some tools here. You can center on your artwork. This little starfish with the box around it will frame your artwork. That's the best way to figure out where on your material your picture is going to go. You can focus your laser with this button here. But the LaserGRBL, think of it as kind of like an Etch-a-Sketch. Whatever you have on the screen, it's going to copy. There's no editing or anything that you can do to that. So if you want to have an image, alter it in any way, change the distortion or the size of the image, or process the image in any way, you have to do it outside of LaserGRBL. LaserGRBL is very simple. So you would open your file. So you find your image. So I'm going to show you first the how to use GRBL just as it is. So you open your image, and you want to use dithering.
Stop sharing, share your whole screen.
Okay, why? What?
Stop sharing. Just a moment, please, while we get that laid out. Entire screen. No, minimize.
Okay.
Stream.
So we'll be right back with that. Give us 1 second. We're just having a slight technical issue with the sharing software.
What are you talking about?
Give me one.
Okay, bring it back up. Sorry. Share. Click that. Now I'm going to minimize this.
Okay, now can you see it?
Yes.
Okay, so you have your image, and this gives you like your preview of what it's going to look like, basically. So for dithering, there's a bunch of different choices that you can use. I typically go with Sierra Light. It really doesn't make that much of a difference. There are some differences in the dithering patterns, but for simple black and white photos, there really isn't a whole lot. Your direction actually makes some bit of a difference. You want to make sure that you're going opposite to your grain. And if you have a multi-grain wood, you would want to do diagonal because you want to go across your grain. Because if you go with your grain, you're gonna see your pics. You're gonna see the grain more in the photo. You want to typically do 5 or 6 for your lines per minute. That's average. If you get too much more than that, you're usually just gonna slow it way down, and you're not gonna make that much of a difference in the quality of the photo, or you're just gonna burn way too dark. And Sean's gonna go into some more detail on quality of photo in a little bit. But so you hit next. This right here is where you set your speed. Photos I typically do at about 2,500 millimeters per minute. You want to make sure that you have dynamic power. And this is how you set your percentage of your power. So white is 0, and your blacks, I typically do, like I said, photographs around 40%. And this is where you set your DPI for your photograph. I typically do around 300. Now, when I'm testing out settings, I do really small photos, so I'm not wasting a whole lot of material. So I set my size at like 1.5 inches or 2 inches. Now, one thing that you have to know with GRBL is its aspect ratio is not changeable. So you can't distort the image. So if I change my width, it'll automatically change my height. There's no you can force it, but you don't necessarily want to. And then you're going to hit create, and you see how it kind of made the image on the screen. Now, the darker the red, the darker the burn. So you want to kind of get a kind of a light red is where you want to kind of go for. And so that would be ready to burn. So that is about what that looks like when I burnt it. So that's about what you got for your sample video. Now, if I wanted to do that same thing and I wanted to process the image with ImageR, let me switch over to that just a second. So how you use ImageR, first thing you do, and you have it walks you through your steps. So you hit upload, you pick your image, and you pick that same image, and it's going to load it. And then you can crop it, you can resize it, you can take it if you wanted to like take the background out of the photo, you could do that. If you wanted to change your aspect ratio, here's where you do it. So you can make it as big, like a 5x7, or you can make it a small 2x2. So, and then you can also change your DPI, right here in the program, and change the quality. And you have your contrast and your brightness, here, so you can, get it to where you like it on the screen, and then you tell it what you're burning and what kind of laser that you have. So we have a diode laser, and we're burning on wood. And it's going. So it does the dithering for you, all within the software. Now, the important thing to keep in mind, if you use any sort of processing software outside of LaserGRBL, when you go to load your file, when you go to load your file, you want to make sure you select this button right here, pass through, because that's going to use the image software settings and not the LaserGRBL settings. So I'm not gonna reload the photo because it looks essentially the same, but so that you just want to make sure if you process it outside of LaserGRBL, you use that pass-through feature. And that's basically all there is to it. It's a very simple software. Any questions on LaserGRBL?
Not seeing any questions quite yet, no.
All right. So, Sean, you're up.
Am I? Okay. So I'll take you guys through the process in LightBurn, and it's fairly similar. Different windows, different layout, but it's all fundamentally the same. And at the same time, I'm going to go through some of the more fundamentals of photos. So right now, I have two examples of a photo that Charles engraved, and we'll be showing that later, of his cat, and she looks well trained, unlike Charles. So if I'm going to zoom in on the right side, and this is a lower quality image, and what you're going to notice is dramatic pixelation, especially in the chest hair on the cat. You're going to see it up on her near her whiskers, on her collar, and her legs. And this is going to make your engraving kind of blotchy, and you're not going to get very good shading or very good detail. So you're going to look for a high quality photo that's about anything over 700 by 700 pixels for the most part. I would consider fairly decent to engrave with a laser. Obviously, if you can find something 1,000 by 1,000 or what have you, it's much better. And that also goes in conjunction with a file type. So the two most common file types for photos are JPEGs and PNGs. JPEGs being the lesser quality compared to a PNG. PNGs are typically larger files that hold a lot more data, so it has a lot more detail to pass on, and a lot more editing options and resizing ability for you to do, so you can stretch it out and maintain that detail in a smaller scaled image. So that's something to keep in mind. JPEGs are, for the most part, okay, but they're very hard to scale up. You end up getting a lot of the blotchiness that you see on this right-hand side.
JPEG introduced a lot of artifacts into it, and every time you modify a JPEG or you edit it or you rewrite it, it can introduce more pixelation into it. So a JPEG actually, once you've created it, it starts deteriorating. It's not a file that will stay around forever in lossless quality. So the more you edit it, the worse it will be. So a PNG, if you're going to be editing, would probably be superior.
Yeah, which thank you. Clarification's good. So with that, you import your photos using the import button, or you can also go through the file menu, tree menu, and then import a photo. Same thing. And then you will right-click the image, and then you will select adjust image. And now you're going to have a preview window. That's going to show you the original image that you've imported into LightBurn and your edited window. So anything you do down here will be represented on the right side window, and you can compare it to your original. I really like doing grayscale. It's very tricky to do, but it's what's going to get you the most comparable result on your medium, and you can actually do some pretty interesting three-dimensional-ish carves. It's almost like a carve. If you got your settings right, you can get a nice texture to your images with grayscale. So from here, you can edit your contrast, get your whites a little whiter. You can add a little more gray just so you can get the lines around the lake, because you can see as you make it brighter, you start losing your hard edges. So it's kind of a dance with the settings to try to get everything. And so brightness, contrast, your gamma, which basically controls how hard your blacks are. So if you up the gamma, your blacks get much blacker. It doesn't affect your whites, but all your blacks will get darker. And this will help when you start sharpening your image with your enhancements. And so the enhanced radius bar basically just kind of dictates how much of the image is going to be enhanced when you move this scroll bar. So you can start seeing my edges getting sharper, and you can start seeing more fine details. It's very easy to overdo it. If you go too much, it just looks like a sketch. So in order to keep realism, you got to learn how to play.
Yeah, with this, I think it's like everything with laser engraving. It's test, and test some more.
Yeah, I'll do 5 or 6 little test burns with different settings just to see what I like. Yeah. But I'll typically keep it in grayscale to do my fine details in LightBurn. And then if I don't want to do a grayscale and I just kind of want it on the not burning into the material, I'll select a dither. We got Jarvie, newsprint, and if I zoom in, you're going to see the different shapes of these dithering algorithms. So every black spot is a shot of the laser. So the laser is going to fire here, not fire in the white, fire in the black, not fire. So that's how you get your details. And everyone has a different arrangement and kind of has a different outcome and works differently on different materials. My favorite on maple ply or maple wood, usually if I'm not doing a grayscale, is Jarvie or Stucky. They tend to give the better details.
Now, if you're going through Imager, you don't need to do this, correct? This is only if you're wanting to do this independently of Imager.
Yeah, this is if you want to do it independently of other editing softwares. You don't want to add a dithering algorithm to a dithering algorithm. You're probably going to end up with a mess. But so with that being all done, we go okay. So now we have our photo. It's I edited this one here, and in the preview, which is very important, it confuses a lot of people. This doesn't mean that it's going to engrave black like this in LightBurn. This is just kind of a representation. If you zoom in, you're going to see where the laser fires and doesn't fire, and you're going to be able to see the detail. The shade according to power will not work with this because it is a dither, but this is just, I just use this now to do a timing, and this is going to take 2 hours and 21 minutes at the current settings I have, which I would scale that down. So in the cut layers, if you want to if you import a photo and you don't want to do any editing here, you double click on your cut layer and you select your pass through.
Yep.
And then all that's going to do is use the way the photo was loaded into LightBurn. And the only things you're going to need to change are your speeds and your power settings. That's it. That's all.
And pass-through is going to override everything then. So when you select pass-through, then it's not going to use any of those settings. It's just going to use your speed and your power, correct?
Yes. It's going to however the image was loaded in, it's going to engrave it that way. So if you have a dithering algorithm and it's got little dots already in the image, that's how it's going to burn.
Perfect.
Apart from that, that's about all you can really do for editing in LightBurn.
Yep. Now we get to go to the fun part, I think, which is how do we get to the power? How do we find the power that we use to make these images? So, and that's where this comes in, our handy dandy power test. We do have
get rid of my the LightBurn screen.
Yes. Now we do have this. Oh wait, hang on just a second. We do have this available for both LightBurn and LaserGRBL. I'm not 100% sure how to load it into LaserGRBL because I've never done it myself. But you can open this. Don't import it. If you open it in LightBurn, it will include all of your settings. You don't have to set anything. And then you'll take it once you have this completed, and you'll have a series of percentages from 0 to 100%, and then from 1,000 millimeters per minute to 9,000 millimeters per minute. And what you're going to want to do is go find the degree of burn that you like the most and go, okay, so this is 30% power at 5,000 millimeters per minute. And then that's going to be the maximum power that you're going to use for your engrave. And then the maximum speed. And once you do that, we've taken the image of Willow the cat and we did a big one, and you can see that it turned out okay. But it needed it wasn't as dark as I wanted it to be. So we did do some other testing, and there's a reason that this little bottle's sitting here. That's we'll get to that in a second, but we redid it again, and this is how it came out the second time. So you can see the difference here. Now this one is standard 6,000 millimeters per minute at 75% power. This is the exact same settings, but with the spray that is in the bottle, which is 1 teaspoon of borax for borax powder for, I believe it was 6 ounces of water. And then I mixed that together and just lightly misted the board and let it air dry, and then engraved it as usual. And it turned out much nicer than the original one. And we actually, I think we have a video of that we were going to show really quickly.
I believe you'll have to start the video, Charles.
Yes. So you can see that that with the addition of the borax spray, that it makes it a much cleaner photo. And I would recommend that you use that if you are going to be doing any image work. And you can experiment with the amount of borax that you put in there, but do not put it on anything that is food. It's not food safe. So don't put it around anything that would be used with food. And then another thing, Sean, that I think that we should cover is the line interval, because that was something that will also really affect your speed and also the quality of your engraving.
Line intervals is basically, what that means is how far the laser is going to move up from its previous line engrave. So every pass basically is a line interval, and the smaller the line interval, the closer your dots are going to be, which also means, depending on your material, you can have more overburn or less overburn. You can have darker areas. You can make a darker area lighter by raising the line interval. And that's the same as LaserGRBL's line quality, or lines per millimeter. And when she sets 5 lines per millimeter, yeah, that's the same thing as a line interval. And that can be found either in the layers menu here in line interval and DPI. They kind of work hand in hand. So if you raise the DPI, you're going to lower your line interval, making your laser lines closer to each other. Every pass is going to be closer to each other. If you lower your DPI, every laser pass will be farther away.
And then if you are reducing the spacing between the lines, you'll also need to reduce the power, because it's going to be going over the same space more. So it will overburn if you're not careful.
Yeah. So a focused, our 10 watt diode focused is 0.08. I believe. I don't know if that's for millimeters or inches. I can't recall at the moment. But yeah, so it comes into play with that. I usually play around 300 to 254-ish to 300 DPI. Seems to be a setting that I'm pretty happy with, but it will slow down your engraving the higher your DPI or the smaller your line is, because it's just more engraving.
Yeah. It will considerably, because if you do it at 0.02 versus 0.1, that is going to be a considerable amount of time. So that's where the preview comes in handy. If you are if you right click, you can preview it, and like Sean showed earlier, and it will tell you exactly how long it thinks that it will take to engrave it.
And anything over 317 DPI, which I see a lot of people, or some people do use, is anything more than that with a diode laser, I don't think is relevant, because of the size that you can get with a diode, the pinpoint laser pinpoint size you can get. Wow, I just stumbled on all those words. So anyways, the laser point won't get much smaller, so anything over that DPI is a waste, because now you're overlapping your burn and you're going to get a lot of overburn, if that makes sense.
Absolutely.
Now the test file that Charles showed is designed for LightBurn, but it will work in LaserGRBL. There is two different files in the knowledge base. If you want to use the test file in LaserGRBL, you have to import it as G code.
Yes.
It's a G code file.
It's a G code file. So you just import the G code. Open it as a G code file, and it will work just the same as it will in LightBurn. LaserGRBL, a question popped up from a Facebook user. There's learning curves to any software. LaserGRBL is significantly more simple than LightBurn. As I showed in the beginning, LaserGRBL does not have any capability of doing any photo editing. It does not have any capability of doing any adding text or resizing the photos. It's basically just load your picture and it's going to copy it. It's kind of like an Etch-a-Sketch or carbon paper. You can't do any modifying with LaserGRBL, so it's very simple to use. It just has limitations, but it's a great software to learn on, and it's free.
And you'll find once you start using a graphics software in general, once you use one and you get used to it, you can stumble your way through learning another one pretty easily, because a lot of the processes are the same. Like if you're wanting to nest something, that's the same. If you're wanting to import, it's going to be in the same area. So once you've learned LaserGRBL, I do think that would be easier to step into LightBurn probably. What do you guys think?
Well, it'll give you kind of an idea. Like if you already know how the laser is going to work and react to certain commands, yeah, it'll make that part easier. But I think the interfaces are completely different. So there's going to be a different learning curve, because LightBurn is more of an more like a draw or paint program with a lot of. So I mean, if you grew up with Windows in the last 20, 30 years, I mean, you're going to be able to at least somewhat comprehend some of those tools, and then you can stumble through the weldings, the bowlings, and the other stuff. Apart from that, once, yeah, it's a little different.
Yeah. And for a lot of this stuff, there's so many valuable resources on YouTube and other places for learning on LightBurn. Like if you're coming across something that you're trying to learn, chances are that somebody has already come across it. So either look through our knowledge base, and if we don't have it, then you can search through YouTube, and chances are we have it on our YouTube page, or someone else can answer it pretty easily.
So I'm gonna share my screen for just a second, just so I can show people the test file is roll.
Okay, sounds good.
I think they froze.
And then while she's doing that, if I will open up the one in LightBurn so that we can look at it as well.
Nope.
Give me 1 second, guys.
Angie's got hers loaded there.
Okay, perfect. Angie is...
Yeah, they got no sound. So essentially, it's going to load. It loaded the G code, so it has all the movements, and that's just a representation of what the program's going to do.
So it just like what just like what Charles was saying. When you have this burn up, the lighter it tells you your speeds and your powers. The lighter the how you want it to look is basically what you're going to want to set your S-min and your S-max and your power on the screen. So if you like how this looks, you'd want to set it at 425. Same with laser with LightBurn. And you do your power settings when you go to your file. When you work on loading your picture, it there's an S-min and an S-max.
You won't get that with this file. You will not get that.
Okay, so
this is loading it. This particular file is loading raw G code, so all of the power settings are preset in it. There is no adjustment for the test file only.
So for the test file only, you cannot edit anything. It's just going to give you your picture representation on your wood.
Perfect.
So that is like I said, LaserGRBL is very simple.
So how do you? So I see everyone using either millimeters or inches. How do you determine the 6,000 millimeters to inches? So that is math, and I'm terrible at math. So
Computer.
We rely on for that.
6,000 millimeters to inches.
It's 25.4.
Inches.
You do it's 2.54 centimeters to an inch, or 25.4 millimeters to an inch. So it's 6,000 divided by 25.4 is approximately 236.
Okay. And then do you use the borax only on a certain kind of wood, or is it good to use on all of them?
That's up to you. Honestly, I personally don't use borax or baking soda. I will struggle and find the right setting to get the proper burn without using it, because I rather use brush on sealers and clear coats. And if I use borax or baking soda, I end up smearing the burn. So
that is a good point. So this is sealed. After I engraved this, before I touched it or before anything else, I sprayed this down with a clear lacquer so that there was, because the borax isn't perfect, it will wipe off. So, but if you spray it with clear, a clear lacquer, it helps reduce that.
Because basically, if you think about the pores of wood, the borax is opening up the pores of the wood because it's getting the wood wet. So it will darken your burn, but it's going to make, it smears very easily when you go to touch it after the fact.
Okay, and then Ted is asking, do you spray the test board with the borax solution before engraving it?
Well, if you're going to use borax for your engraving, I would recommend doing your test burn with borax as well. Yes.
Absolutely.
If you're not going to use borax, then don't.
Yep. All right. And then the next question, what is the highest power to use for diodes?
I don't typically like going over 75%. I will push to 80 if I'm cutting, but I don't like running it at 80% as it heats up the internals of the laser and it can burn it out prematurely.
It's
Yeah,
never
I tend
recommended to
around
push your
75.
laser past 80% for extended periods of time because you're degrading the laser faster.
Yes. And all of these were done at 75% power, and they were done faster just because I wanted to get them done quickly. If I was actually doing this for myself, or if I wanted to, like this one, this is an image of a set of train tracks. And if I wanted to do a little bit better of a job with this, I would probably not use borax and I would slow it down considerably. And then, all right, so Tommy is asking, can you show the LightBurn test file? And yes, we can. I actually have that pulled up on my computer right now. So give me 1 second.
You don't have to. I do.
Okay. So this is the YoraHome test file in LightBurn. And as you can see over here on the right-hand side, all of the settings are already applied. So everything, you don't have to do anything. You just come in, you set where you want it, you tell it to preview, and then you start your burn. Let me think.
Don't change anything.
No, if you change something, that actually can mess up the burn, and then you won't get an accurate representation of what you want. Now, another thing, we do have 2 separate test files now, because this test file, you can see right here, there is, these are cutting files. So this is used for a lot of 1/8 inch or thinner materials, but we also have one that does not have the cutting files. It's only the engraving files for if you're doing metals or like the coated tumblers, or you were doing
aluminum coated stainless.
Yes. You know, doing anything like that, you wouldn't want to use the cut files just because they're pointless, and you're just you would just be. I mean,
you could just disable those layers too if you wanted to.
You can, but there, just to be easier, there is a test file specifically for that. If that's what you need. Okay.
So, Ted asked, do you use air assist when engraving pictures? I typically don't.
And I do.
But you could, because you you have to be careful with your air because it can spread soot on your picture. But it really kind of depends on your material and what you want. Like Sean uses his air. I typically don't. So it's personal preference.
Mm-hmm. And I use it at about 40%, just enough to keep the lens clean.
That's specifically why. Yes. Yes and no. Too high. You have to find that happy medium for high speeds. I'll engrave photos around 2,500 millimeters a minute, which is around 100 inches a minute, or 120 inches a minute. And my photos usually come out pretty decent. Not too many complaints. Just make sure all your rollers and your belts are tight. Your laser's tight and firm. You got no movement. Because the faster you do engrave at, if you have anything loose, the more enunciated it's going to be in your engraving.
Yeah. And then,
so a couple people have made the mention, says for the LightBurn application test file, the settings look like you're at 100%, contrary to the previous recommendation about going over 75%. That is true. What you need to keep in mind is this test file is burning at 100% for a very brief minute for a test only. What we were talking about is doing extended burns. You don't want to run your laser at over 75% for extended periods of time. Keep in mind that most photographs can take a couple hours to burn, and if you're running that laser for a couple hours at 100%, you're downgrading your laser. So that's what we're talking about. The few seconds or a few minutes that you could run it at 100% to do that test file is not going to be damaging, whereas doing so, burning the whole photograph at 100% power is what's going to damage your laser.
And also, this is using something called power scaling. So everything is set at 100% for these and this, but there's only one of each of these that's actually running at 100%, because these are running at 90%, these are running at 80%, 70%, 60%. So even though they all say 100, if you actually went in and looked at this specific one, like right here, you would see that it's actually only 30% power, because the power scale is set to 30% power instead of max power being 100%. So it can get a little bit confusing, but there is a setting that I used when making this to make it a little bit easier.
That's why we set up the file for you, so you didn't have to figure all that out.
Yeah.
No, you use the test file on a scrap piece of material before you just go to load your photo or your image and engrave that on your real piece of material. That test file is for a reference for you, so you can see kind of quickly where you're going to start out. That's all.
Yeah.
It's
So
for.
yeah,
You keep that test file. Like, so if I got maple, cherry, and poplar, I'll take a chunk of all three of those woods and I'll engrave that test file on all of them, and then I'll keep that for reference in the future when I want to go engrave a maple charcuterie board, and I have a big vector and I want to know what my best settings are. Okay, my maple test file. Okay, I like 1500 at 35%. Okay, that's what I'm going to use, and then I go from there.
Yeah, the test file is simply for looking at the different types of material that you burn with. It's just to give you a starting point, so to speak, for different materials. Add it to your reference library. So if you're if you've never burnt on bamboo, you'd want to do a test file. If you've never burnt on maple, you want to do a test file so that you know your starting point for that material. Now, the one thing that I wanted to mention on doing photographs on wood, you really want to factor in the grain of that wood, because the grain is going to pop with you doing photographs. So I typically use like your maple or your birch, a really light, like this is basswood, that has virtually no grain to it. I believe if you look at Charles' cat photo, they're right across the eyes, you see a nice grain line with his maple. So that's kind of what we're talking about. You really want to factor in the grain of a wood when you're doing photographs.
The laser can't override the grain of the wood. Like, it's just going to accentuate what's there. So if there is a grain line or a differentiation there, it will accentuate it.
So, and to really hit on that point, I do most of my work on natural. I don't use ply very often, and you're going to come across some spalted woods. Images on this don't turn out very good at all because the soft spots and the darker spots really burn dark. So you're really going to have to play around, especially if you like natural slabs of wood. They all burn different, so you're going to have to play with them all. And if you stain your wood in a test file, yeah, you could. I find it typically burns the same. But yeah, you know what? To be safe, yeah, I would. It smells and it's stinky, but yeah.
Yeah, if you want to get an accurate representation of what it's going to look like, then you would want to either paint or stain it to your finished setup and then engrave it.
Your test files are going to give you your look, so you want to try and mimic what your finished product is going to go through. Because if you do a test file on unpainted wood and then you try and use those burn settings on painted wood, you're not going to get the results that you expect.
No.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Any other questions from Facebook or YouTube or anywhere else?
That's all the questions that we're seeing right at the moment. Wait, one just popped up. Burn the image, cross the grain of the wood. Correct. That you want to go opposite your grain. That is correct.
Yes. For the best image quality.
Bite my tongue.
All right.
All right. So, guys, I think that's it. So if that's it from everybody, I think that we're going to close this out.
Okay. Well, thanks for watching, everyone. Hope to see you work on